Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you so much. And it's great to be here with fellow Conduit members, even though we're still virtual. It's fantastic to be part of this digital program. And I am so thrilled today that we have Aaron Phipps with us. Aaron is a Paralympian. He was in the 2012 Paralympics. He's a double below the knee amputee. And he's going to share with us today his incredible story about how that happened and then what he's done with his life since then, which is pretty incredible. I know, Aaron, whenever I speak to you, I just get really excited and inspired. And I feel like people need that right now. You know, a lot of people are facing a lot of challenges, different degrees of challenges, but hearing from you and your incredibly positive attitude about how to deal with challenges, I think is what we need. And, you know, you're not just a Paralympian, you're the first wheelchair user to climb Mount Kilimanjaro unaided, which is also pretty incredible. You're also a very busy dad. So Aaron is currently trying to homeschool Chloe and Ella. So any of you with kids will know what that's like. And he's fitting that around his training as an athlete and his work as a motivational speaker. So I know you're super busy. So thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the Conduit.
Hey, Emily, thank you very much for having me.
Well, we're just thrilled because your story is so inspiring, and we're going to come on to your lessons and how this came about. And please, everyone, do ask questions at the end. Aaron does a lot of speaking in schools and tells me he's been asked every question under the sun, including some very inappropriate ones. So apparently you can ask anything you want at the end of the session. But let's just start with now, before we get into your story, because you were training for the Paralympics in Tokyo in August, and obviously that's not happening. So when did you realize, like really realize, oh, I'm not going? And how did that feel?
Okay, it was, yeah, everything was ramped up. My entire lifestyle was built around peaking at that event in August. I hadn't drank anything. I was having a dry year. And when you're training for a massive competition, it's a bit like a mountain. So basically you can't stay completely fit all the time. So you have to peak and trough. But I was building to peak at that moment in August. So if you imagine it climbing a mountain, I was maybe two-thirds of the way up, and I was doing lots of really heavy, intense weights. I was building up, and then as I was going to come over the summit, I was going to peak at the games, and everything was going to be great. But yeah, it just stopped.
What was that? When did you hear, or did someone just tell you, right, Aaron, that's it, it's not happening?
It was we had a tournament in February called the Quad Nations in Leicester, and we were playing America and Australia and Japan. And we were sat as a team, and our CEO came to address us, and he spoke to us and said, you know, we might not be going to the test event in March in Japan. We went, what do you mean we might not go to the test event? And at this point, he was having conversations with health officials, the wellness team at Paralympics GB, and they were saying, it's really unlikely you'd catch this illness, the flu's much worse, etc. There's a chance this might get cancelled. And then it escalated as it did for everybody, and we didn't go to the test event, and then the games got cancelled. That was quite a shock, if I'm honest. I didn't think that would happen. Deep down, I thought it will still go ahead. You know, you don't cancel the biggest sporting event in the world, the Olympics and the Paralympics, followed closely by the World Cup. You just don't cancel that. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I thought it would happen behind closed doors. So it was, yeah, it was a massive blow, massive blow.
How did you react? Like, how did you feel immediately afterwards? Because you're obviously, you've got this intense training program. Obviously the next day you don't need to get up and do your intense training. Like what was the week like after that?
Oh, I was so miserable. I really was. And I mean, I have to just set this a little bit. I appreciate sport isn't everything. And obviously with everything going on in the world, the postponement was absolutely the right decision. But as an athlete building to peak at that games, it was massive. And this is a bit of a strange thing to say as a motivational speaker, but I had to demotivate myself. I was on this upward trajectory, and you know, everything was based around peaking at this moment. My diet, my nutrition, my training, everything. I was getting really fired up. We're doing our video analysis, we're studying other teams, we're beating other teams in the run up to the games in tournaments, and to just stop it was really tough.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't been training for the Olympics, but I imagine there have been lots of people who've had small things that they've been building up to in their lives or been looking forward to. And it's just to suddenly just go, oh, I can't be excited about that anymore. Like you would then hit low, but you can't also just take a holiday and say, right, that's it, I don't have to train anymore, which I'm sure on some level it would be quite nice to do that. So what does it mean now? Because it's not like the Olympics won't happen, right? When are they going to happen?
Okay, so it's just been postponed for a year. So hold on. So when you said I couldn't take a holiday, remember I hadn't drunk anything from Christmas. Since then I have drunk quite a lot. But blimey, this is being recorded and I shouldn't be saying this. I'm still an athlete. Don't tell anybody I said that. But no, on a serious note, I mean, I had to switch my training. So I was doing lots of power-based training. And I know this isn't very pleasant for people, but you know, sometimes I'm training in the lab at the university where I train to the point that I'm blacking out or I'm being sick all over myself. It's that kind of intensity.
Yeah.
Pushing yourself past your maximum so that you can be as fit as possible to compete against the best players in the entire world. And I just switched my training around. So where it's gone from really intense power-based things, I've calmed it down. I'm doing like longer duration cardio sessions. I'm really fortunate. I've got a hand bike. I live in the New Forest and I've been going out on my hand bike and it's much nicer. I'm not being sick and you know, I can stop and have a drink and look at the horses wandering around and take it a bit more easy. But I have to do that to keep myself ticking over.
Yeah, so it's a different kind of training. Now, obviously, GB Wheelchair Rugby is a team sport. Also, I don't think people realise it's unfunded, right? So you don't have any dedicated training facilities. You don't get paid as athletes. So you're kind of having to fit this in and around everything else. What does it mean to not be able to get together with your team? It's a very physical sport, right? So you can't be around your teammates anymore. What's that like?
We should probably explain the contact bit, shouldn't we, for people who haven't seen it yet? So, wheelchair rugby is it's the only full contact wheelchair sport. So it's a bit like basketball. Really quick story. It was invented in Canada in the 70s, and they called it murder ball. They struggled to get corporate sponsorship for a sport named
called it murder ball.
Yeah, and they couldn't enter it into the Paralympics called murder ball, so they changed the name to wheelchair rugby. But we play on a basketball court. It's a bit like wheelchair basketball, but we can knock each other out with our chairs. But yeah, so we unfortunately the team came 5th in Rio, so they lost their UK sport funding. So we're self-funded. So that's been quite a challenge for our CEO because he now has to find another year's worth of funding to get us through the games. So that's a challenge in itself.
Yeah, and then you can't be around each other and motivate each other in the same way. How are you interacting in the new virtual world?
Oh, I think I speak to my coach more now than I did before. So we're still, as you all are here, we're still having Zoom catch-ups and we're having line-up meetings. It's difficult because you can't put the things you're discussing into practice because normally you'd have a discussion, you look at some video and then you go away and practice it. We can't do that, but we can still analyse other teams, analyse other players and see where we can be better and stronger. And that's what we're trying to do in this time. So we're still interacting with each other all the time.
Still working hard. And if anyone wants to support GB Wheelchair Rugby, it is a registered charity, so you can support them and help them get to the next games in with the best chance possible of getting a medal. So let's go back to where this all started, because you were an able-bodied 15-year-old.
Indeed.
And then everything changed. So just share with us what happened to you.
Okay, so I'll give you a brief version of the story. I was able-bodied 15-year-old, lived at home with my parents and my younger sister. And it was the first day back to school after the Christmas holidays. And it's funny, all those years of school, and I missed the run up to my exams, the most important bit. But my sister and her friend were going off to watch a pantomime that evening. I was 15 years old. I was too cool to be going to a pantomime, so I stayed at home. And I remember telling my mum that I didn't feel very well. And I went up and got into bed and I had a fever. I had flu-like symptoms and we didn't think anything of it. It was January. There was lots of flu and illness around at that time. And I got up and I vomited twice in the night and cleaned my teeth and went back to bed as you do when you're poorly. And my dad woke me up in the morning to see how I was. And I said I didn't feel great, to put it politely. And I got up to go to the toilet and I collapsed on the landing. This was at 7 o'clock in the morning. And my dad heard me fall down. So he ran upstairs, scooped me up, put me in my parents' bed. And he saw a rash appearing on my chest just here. So my mum was asking my little sister to bring a glass to do the glass test for meningitis. And my sister didn't understand, so she kept bringing a glass of water. So they got a glass and they did the test and the rash didn't disappear. So they called out a doctor who called out an ambulance. And it's really quite scary. My very first symptoms to life support machine was 12 hours. And the rash to life support machine was just 1 hour.
Wow.
I mean, if you think if it had been the weekend or they'd let me lie in or something, they hadn't woken me up, then it might have been a different story. So the technical term of what I had was acute respiratory and renal failure, which is basic from meningococcal septicemia. So that's the technical way of saying that everything shut down except my heart. So I became very poorly. They gave me a 20% chance of survival. I think that was just really being nice to give my parents some hope. This was back in 1999. I think when people were that poorly then, you know, most of the time it would have been a different outcome.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure I appreciate what my parents went through until I had my own children, really. Apparently my dad, every time he fell asleep, when he woke up, he burst into tears. He kept thinking it was a dream, and then he'd realize it was his reality. I think the hardest thing they had to hear was they said, if my heart failed, could they give me a bypass to monitor the effects of the illness to help other people?
Wow.
I agreed to that. And I don't know how on earth you'd do that with your own child. And I was in intensive care for a month. I was in an induced coma for 2 weeks. Then they woke me up from my coma. So your body's really clever at keeping you alive. And it sent my blood to my vital organs like my heart, my liver, my kidneys, and my brain. Though to be honest, you probably wouldn't always know it with my brain. And I didn't get enough blood to the ends of my legs and the tips of my fingers. So they woke me up in intensive care. And they broke the news to me at first. I might have to have the very tips of my fingers amputated and my toes. Imagine that, you know, 15, all those hormones. You're unsure about yourself anyway, aren't you? And getting that news. And I had a trachea, so I had a tracheotomy. So I've got a little scar on my throat just here. I was breathing with a tube that went down my throat. And I know for people listening, that doesn't sound very pleasant, but believe me, when you can't breathe, you're not worried about that little piece of plastic.
Yeah.
And the surgeon came in one day to have a look at my legs, and the nurse had unbandaged my legs. You know, and he touched my legs and said, "Can you feel this?" And I shook my head. And he touched my legs again and said, "Can you feel this?" And I shook my head. And he broke the news to me that it wasn't just going to have to be my toes, it was going to have to be my feet. And I remember screaming, but because of the trachea, no sound was coming out. And my parents were crying and the nurses were in bits. Imagine, like, you know, being 15 years old and getting that information. It was just so difficult to digest at that time. So difficult to digest. But I started to improve and I moved out of intensive care. I was in hospital for a year in total, trying to rehabilitate and get better because I was so incredibly poorly. I left hospital the next year, got my first set of prosthetic legs, passed my driving test.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that was massive, you know. You learn to drive when you're 16 if you're disabled. So I passed the day after my 17th birthday. There we go.
That's amazing. So, I mean, a year in hospital, that's really tough. How did you deal with that mentally? I mean, I imagine there were lots of low days in hospital.
Yeah, it was. And it's difficult to talk about now because I've gone on to do so many other things. But at the time when you caught up in that, it was, it was really tough. We cried a lot. But I always had that vision in my head that I wasn't going to let it stop me or beat me. So I decided to dig deep. When I was in intensive care, I demanded double the physio sessions. I'm not having enough physio, even though it really hurts. I want more physio sessions. So the physios, bless them, used to come in on their lunch break and do extra sessions with me because I just decided I wanted to get fitter. So I'm there in intensive care trying to lift like these puny little weights, trying to get fitter.
Were you an athlete before this happened?
No, not particularly. I mean, I liked extreme sports. I was growing up 13, 14, I liked skateboarding and BMXing and throwing myself down handrails and off of ramps and generally hurting myself. That kind of links into the sport I play now, to be fair. But, you know, but not competitively, not in a team sport as such. Funny how things work out.
Well, it is. You probably wouldn't have ended up at the Olympics in that situation. So where did this drive come from then? Because you had this drive to do all this extra physio. Were you very driven before that, or was that to do with having faced such a big challenge?
I think it was to do with having such a big challenge. I try and work this out now myself. I think, you know, I wouldn't say boo to a goose before I was poorly. I was quite timid and just kind of got on with my schoolwork, etc. And after that happened, I was like, well, if this can't kill me, nothing can. Rah! And it gave me this drive I never had. But if you want to kick up the bum, nearly dying will do that for you. And it brought out something of me which I never had before.
Yeah, which is incredible. And I don't wish anyone on this call gets close to death, but there is something about if you do something really tough and you get through it, it kind of toughens you up, but you also think you kind of really appreciate the things you can do. You know, I wouldn't have even thought of doing a lot of the things that you've done. And I know you said you wouldn't have thought of doing them before this happened to you, but it just spurred you on. I know your parents were also incredible. How did they help you stay positive?
Well, they were, guess they made me be humble, and you know, I always had to say thank you to the nurses when things were going on, and you know, these people around there helping me, and I had to appreciate their support. But they were also quite cruel, to be kind, I guess. When we left hospital, they told me I had to go and get a job, and I couldn't just sit at home. And they didn't wrap me in cotton wool, which I think was the big thing. You know, I carried on living my life as I would as a normal sort of 17, 18-year-old, going out in my wheelchair with my friends. And they could have done the opposite. And I sometimes, unfortunately, say with my wheelchair rugby team, club team, you know, people come along, you've been wrapped in cotton wool, it really doesn't help. You know, big bad world can be a scary place. And you've got to get on with it, and you've got to learn by your mistakes. You know, going out and getting drunk and falling out your wheelchair. You've got to deal with it, aren't you?
It's like a regular teenager, right?
Yeah, like it's being recorded again, isn't it, Blimey? I'm gonna get shot if any of my team see this.
It's so true. Did you have anyone be negative though and limit you and say, oh, well, now this has happened, you won't be able to do this?
I guess, yeah, I'd answer this. You get some prejudiced people, don't you, along the way, and you meet people who would perhaps have that attitude. But I've always tried to be a bit realistic about my own limitations as well now. So there's, you know, I'm not going to be able to climb up a ladder and paint the side of my house if I need to. I'm going to get somebody else to do that. You've got to look at the positive and play up to your strengths that you have. So, you know, I'm now playing international sport for my country in a wheelchair. Not many people do that. Yeah. There are some things I would still struggle with. No, if someone told me I couldn't do something, that's a red flag to a ball for me. Tell me I can't do it, and I'm probably going to try and prove you wrong. So probably did me a favour.
Well, I love that you say, oh, you set realistic goals, because we're going to talk about some of the challenges you've achieved. And for most people, they wouldn't really consider them that realistic. I mean, you were very driven to recover, but you didn't come straight out of this and go, right, I'm going to be a Paralympian. So how did you end up in the 2012 Games? Like, what was your journey to get there?
Okay, so that was completely by chance, because I volunteered to do something, to give something a go. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, to everybody on the call, because obviously you're really motivated people who are on this call, etc. But yeah, I wanted to raise some money for charity. I wanted to raise some money for the Meningitis Research Foundation that helped me out when I've been poorly. I said this to my friend, and he said, you should enter the local race. And I just went, yeah, all right, just like that, 10K race in my everyday wheelchair. And I did the 10K race. And I started at the very front. Whenever you have wheelchairs in races, they start at the front. And they blew the whistle, and off I went. 2 minutes after that, they blew the whistle, the runners started, and every single one of them overtook me, and I came right at the back. I loved it. And I wanted to do more races, and I got myself a second-hand racing wheelchair. And then again, just by chance, someone said, you should enter the London Marathon. And I went, yeah, all right, like that again. And here's the thing, every cloud. Look, it takes most people years to get into the London Marathon. Not if you're in a wheelchair. I got accepted first time because they like it. It looks good when the BBC pans across. So I got accepted first time to do the marathon. And halfway around, my chair broke first time I did it. I managed to finish it with horrendous cramp in my backside. So I wasn't going to give up. And then again, that thing in my head went, come on, you're going to do this better. And then I kind of, at that point was when I started to take it a bit more seriously, and started training up to about 10 times a week in my racing wheelchair. First time I did the London Marathon, I did it in 2.5 hours. I trained as hard as I could for that whole year, came back again the next year and did it in 1 hour, 59 minutes. Knocked half an hour off my time in 1 year and came 4th UK male.
Amazing.
So that wasn't bad going. So that was, and then that led me into the rugby. I got headhunted by the GB team who'd seen this achievement, and kind of, you know, on Toy Story with the little, is it going to be me? And the grabber comes down. Here you go. And I was given the most amazing opportunity. They said, you know, I'm sat in meetings with people and they're saying, if you work your backside off, you could get selected for a Paralympics. And that's kind of what I did.
I mean, it's incredible. It started with just saying yes to something small. I know we'll come on to your lessons later and kind of what you share with people in your motivational talk, but it is that you just start with something small and look where you ended up. So yeah. What was it like to be in the 2012 Paralympics?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was, I think it completely changed perception of disability in the UK forever. I remember as a team, we were sat around the telly one night to watch the Channel 4 adverts, and when they put out the Superhumans advert first time round, and our jaws hit the floor. Paralympic sport had never been seen like this before, with hip-hop music playing in car crashes and explosions. You know, during the Olympics, Channel 4 putting up these signs saying, thanks very much for the warm-up, here come the Superhumans. And to be part of that was unreal. But the actual games, I mean, we did it so well, didn't we? We nearly sold out the entire Paralympics, and that's never happened before. My teammates said in, in Sydney and Athens, there was no one there. In Beijing, they were bringing in coach loads of locals and almost holding up a sign saying clap now. In London, the crowds. I remember David Weir speaking and saying, we've never had this before. Thank you so much. And it just changed perceptions forever. But as an athlete, we came fifth. And that famous saying, it's all about taking part. Absolutely rubbish. Don't listen to anyone who tells you that. So, it was all right, but I'm really competitive and I wanted to win. So I took a break then, but now I'm having a second crack at the whip. But yeah.
It was great. I mean, I'm very lucky because I live in Greenwich and I was able to go to a lot of the Paralympics and it was electric.
Yeah.
And you get excited about sports that I love the track, so I saw the track events, but I went to the fencing and I was getting so caught up in it. And I know nothing about fencing, but it's just incredible. It was so exciting for anyone to be part of 2012. Now, I think, again, what a lot of people don't appreciate is if you're a professional athlete, you're funded, you don't have to work, you've got all this sponsorship, you've got dedicated facilities. You were training, and you've talked earlier about the level to which you train. You were training to peak for the 2012 Olympics while you had a full-time job to support yourself and your family, and you had a 1-year-old daughter.
Wow.
Explain to me how that is possible.
I did it all round the wrong way. Married, mortgage, elite athlete. And that kind of didn't work. I haven't mentioned my wife. Yeah, we got married in that period of time between me doing the marathons. And, I was presented with this amazing opportunity, like I said, but I had a full-time job and a mortgage. I couldn't stop working.
Yeah.
We got a little bit of funding from UK Sport at the time. That wasn't just going to be enough to pay the bills. So I had to work a full-time job as well. And I'm not getting my little violin out when I say this, but it is tough when you see kind of able-bodied counterparts or multimillionaires, and I'm there in the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning before work doing my training. But there you go. That's a conversation for another day, maybe.
How do you psych yourself up every day? I mean, I'm really not a morning person, so I would find getting up, training, and then going to work, then being with your family. I mean, I'd probably just be like weeping a lot of the time. Like, how did you get through it from a mental perspective?
This was going to be one of my points later, one of my learning. I mention it now. Then it's really important to have a good support network around you. So I had a team of people who would train me and be there with me. So I can't let them down. So it'd be tough if you're a runner and you're running out your front door and at 5 in the morning, but I would go to a gym and I'd have people with me who were training me, who were motivating me. I mean, I'm playing it down a bit. There was times when I was so exhausted, I'd be on the gym floor crying, like literally, because something had happened and I would just be a mess. But I just had that end goal in sight. Just wanted to go to London. It was just going to be phenomenal.
Well, it is incredible that you did that. Then I know you had a bit of much needed downtime. So then how did you end up saying, oh, you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah. So again, I agreed to something I probably shouldn't agree to. This literally started by chance again. Mike from the charity, MRF, turned up at my house. And we sat there drinking a cup of tea and he said, we send thousands of university students up Kilimanjaro to raise money for us. Do you fancy it? So I said, all right, yeah. I finished my cup of tea and he left. I then had to Google Kilimanjaro because I had a bit of an idea, but I didn't actually know what it was. And if you Google it, you see this big picture, a massive mountain with loads of giraffes and things in front of it. And I went, oh. But we looked into it. Other people have been up Kili in a wheelchair. They've been carried to the top. Literally 4 bits of rope tied around the wheelchair, over the guide's shoulders, walk to the top. That wasn't happening. So we set this goal to become the first person in the world in a wheelchair to get to the top of Kilimanjaro without any assistance. I need to take a step back and explain something actually. I do have prosthetic legs as an amputee and I can wear them, but I've got bad scars from the meningitis. So I'd never be able to walk up the mountain. So that's why I do things in a wheelchair and I play wheelchair sport. Probably should have explained that earlier on, but there we go. And yeah, so we got all this information back that it was probably going to be doable. There was these man-made paths. I got myself this massive off-road wheelchair called a mountain trike, which has almost got ski poles. You drive it like this, it's geared. And I was basically just going to have to do a chest press up a mountain.
It's quite a long chest press.
It's going to look great afterwards, but it's going to be hard work. But we got there and it was apparent it wasn't going to be as easy as before. We set off, first day was meant to take between 2 and 3 hours, including a lunch break. Didn't take between 2 and 3 hours, took us 6.5 hours. The next day was meant to take between 4 and 5 hours, didn't, took 10.5 hours. So I sat eating my breakfast on the mountain the next day. Joshua, the head guide, came to speak to me. He said to me, you know, what's your goal? I said to get to the top. He said, good, but we're going to have to carry you. So me being me and very stubborn, I said, well, that's not happening. We had a full-blown argument on the side of a mountain in Tanzania. It got really heated. I had something with me. So I took some carpenter's knee pads with me. Just knee pads you can buy from B&Q. And I had a really technical mountaineering piece of equipment called duct tape. I duct taped my knee pads to my legs, and because I'm stubborn, I said, you're not carrying me, and I jumped out my wheelchair because I knew that I could move faster, and I crawled on my hands and knees to get to the top.
And how long, tell us how long you crawled for.
Yeah, that took 4 days, 4 days of crawling.
Yeah.
And the summit night was brutal.
I mean, I never get tired of hearing this story. And every time I hear that, I think I've got no excuse to ever give up, because Aaron crawled for 4 days to get to the top of a mountain. I mean, go on.
The summit night, weird thing is about Kilimanjaro, you set off to attempt the summit at midnight. So bearing in mind, I've crawled for 3 days on my hands and knees, I'm in bits. You set off at midnight, and the reason you do that is because if anything goes wrong, they can evacuate you from the mountain as soon as the sun comes up at 4:30 in the morning. And that's the hardest thing that I've ever done. Going through everything I've been through in hospital, that night was just brutal. At times it was this steep, I kept sliding backwards. I was going along on my hands and knees, like my knee pads were full of blood. It was horrendous. And you know what? I wasn't wearing my glasses, and I was staring straight down at the side of the mountain. I had a headlamp on, and it's creating this big dot in front of me as I was looking down. And I'm just trying to crack on with it. And as I was going along, Emilie, I was just crying. And I didn't want the guys to see it. So I was watching my eyes go all fuzzy, teardrops rolling off my eyelashes and dropping into the spotlight of my headlamp, disappearing into the side of the mountain. I'm a big hard bloke, and I didn't want them to see me crying. So I was just trying to wipe my eyes like this. And I did that for about 5 hours. It was 10 hours in total on the summit night. But then we made it to the very top.
How did you like not give up?
Again, I mean, by that point, I'd come so far. I was delirious. I didn't know what was going on. I was making sure I kind of kept trying to eat and drink. We walked over a glacier, and I couldn't work out what all this white stuff was. I didn't have a clue. But there was no way I was getting carried at this point, and I was going to make it all the way to the top. You know, I got to share that with my dad as well. I was, 34 at the time, do the maths quickly, and I dragged my dad to the top of a mountain so he could fix my wheelchair if I broke it. I was so proud of him as well, because when we both made it to the top.
I mean,
collapsed, but he made it.
We'll send a follow-up email to everyone who joined with your contact details if anyone wants to support Meningitis Research Foundation or GB Wheelchair Rugby. But I think we're also going to include a clip just to show people you doing that, climbing Kili on your hands and knees, because it is something to see. And at the end of it, your team is singing. They're singing, and you get to the summit, and you can see how emotional that is. Like, how did you feel when you realized, oh my God, I've actually done this?
To be honest, at the time, I was just so relieved it was over, because I was in absolute agony. So it was sort of pleasure, pain. I was really so happy that I'd achieved it. I just wanted it over. I don't actually think I realized what I'd achieved by crawling up until I got home, and I told people, and they'd literally say, you did what? And I'd say, well, crawled up. What do you mean you crawled up? And and that's kind of when it hit me what I'd really achieved.
Yeah.
At the time, I'll send out the video so everyone can see it. But it was a magical moment, and getting to share that with my dad. Oh, and you get a really good phone signal on top of a mountain as well. So I'm there having a WhatsApp conversation with home, sending pictures to my little girl, saying, "Look, we're here." Oh. So that was just unreal.
It's incredible. Well, your story is so great, and one of the things I love about you is just how positive you are. I think it's so inspirational. What I wanted to make sure we left time for is to share some of the lessons. But let's just start with, given what you know now, what advice would you go back and give your younger self, or any young person who's had something similar happen, and really, it's kind of thrown a massive span in the works. They don't know exactly what's going to happen to them. What advice would you give someone in that situation?
If I could pick myself up now, I'd love to go back and speak to that 15-year-old and say, do you know what? it all works out in the end. It was tough and scary when I was laid in that hospital bed and wondering what the hell I was going to do with my life and how I was going to be, and would I ever meet a girl, get married, would I ever do all the normal things that normal people do, let alone being an athlete. So I think it's just, particularly everything that's going on at the moment, is have it at the back of your mind that things will get better. It's difficult when you're caught up in the middle of something like we are at the moment to see that, but just, you know, have at the back of your mind that things will improve. And I think that's part of being resilient, isn't it? That's having it, knowing that, you know, when COVID ends, it will end, or we'll perhaps we'll create a vaccine, or things will start to calm down. You know, things might not go back to exactly as they were, but there is going to be a better time. Sometimes it's difficult to see that when you're caught up in the middle of something.
Yeah, and it's kind of the element of having faith that there are ups and downs in life, and that for you was obviously there was a massive down moment, but that things will right themselves. How about when someone's just had that major setback? And how do you go from just being massively disappointed, which didn't just happen then, it's obviously just happened with the games now. How do you go from that disappointment to like, okay, how am I going to make progress or turn this into something positive?
I think it's important to just do simple things like set yourself goals. So normally I'll be a massive advocate for setting massive, dirty, stinking goals. There's a really brilliant speaker called David Heiner who talks about that. I suggest you look him up. And he talks about, you know, why would you make anything that's specific, measurable, achievable, etc. Set huge goals and go for it. But maybe not at the moment when we're caught up in something like this. I think my advice would be is to set yourself goals so you've got a kind of vision and you can keep working through this, but don't overwhelm yourself because you know, things are changing on a daily basis, aren't they? So for example, when I was in my hospital bed and I was looking at rehabilitating, you know, I wasn't laid in my hospital bed saying, okay, I'm going to be training for a Paralympics, this huge goal in the future. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to be having a dressing change tomorrow. I need to psych myself up for that. That's going to be painful. I need to keep my hips flexible so that when I get my first set of prosthetic legs, I'm going to be able to stand up on them. I need to keep trying to build up my muscles because I'm sat down so much. It's going to be difficult to stand up. And then when you get your first set of prosthetic legs, you know, you're able to stand up in 2 parallel bars for a few seconds and you get dizzy. And then you're able to take a few steps and then you get a pair of crutches and you can go out on your crutches. So it's setting lots of little goals at the moment. That would be my advice, particularly through this crisis that we're going through. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and it gives you confidence when you do each little one, the confidence that you can do the next one, that you can do the next one. So suddenly have the confidence that you can be a Paralympian.
Yeah, and I mean, look, at the moment, I've been doing quite a lot of DIY. I never get any free time to do things like that because I'm so busy. So I've been doing little jobs at home, painting things that have been bugging me for ages. So, you know, they don't always have to be massive, enormous goals. Just get through this the best way that you can. Do it in your way.
I know there's also something you talk about in your keynote where you talk about choice, like you have a choice about how you can react to setbacks. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I do. So, yeah, one of my big key messages is around choices. You know, no matter what life throws at you, you can sink or swim, can't you? And sadly, I've met people along my journey who've become amputees as well, and it's completely changed their life, and to the point that they don't go out, they don't do anything, they don't socialise. You have a choice. Look, life can be cruel at times, and life takes its twists and turns. But whatever happens, you decide how you behave in that situation. And if you make a positive choice, you're going to be more successful. You're going to be a more positive person, and more things will come from it. A bit like this situation now, you could look at it as a massive negative, or try and find the lessons within it. There will be lessons. Try and find those lessons and take them forward. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm sure a lot of people have learned more in the last 2 months than they have in the last couple of years. It's you know, there's always a positive. There's always a positive.
Yeah, and there's always, you know, you learn a lot about yourself when it's difficult, not when it's all really easy. So it is going, okay, well, what am I learning about myself? I mean, you've learned that you have the most incredible grit. I mean, I don't know anyone who's as persistent as you are. So that's like, and it's an amazing thing to learn that you've got that superpower. You know, it's because then you can realize you can do more. But I know you also talk about, it's not just you, about the value of building a really positive team around you as well.
Okay, yeah. So I touched on this a little bit earlier about having a big support network. And this was one of the things I wanted to mention, particularly for the guys out there, because when I'm training, I have my head coach, physiotherapist, sports psychologist, strength and conditioning coach, nutritionist. The list would just go on. I have and my teammates even, I have such a big support network of people around me who help me when I'm trying to perform and trying to be my best. I think it's really important to keep that. So although at the moment we're only able to chat on Zoom, I'm still chatting to my teammates on Zoom. But do that with your friends as well. You know, the people that you can speak to where you can just be yourself. You can have a good rant and you can talk about how things are annoying you, or you know, the people you're stuck at home with are peeing you off, or etc. You know, I think it's important to do that and have a good support network around you. Especially as us guys, we don't do that enough. I guess anyone on this call is used to using Zoom and is on a call, but you know, some of your friends might not be. So pick up the phone and speak to them. Go, hey, do you know what? I can ring you through WhatsApp and have a face-to-face conversation with them. I had a chat with a mate the other day, and you know, we ended up chatting for 2.5 hours. And afterwards, he just messaged me and said, "Thanks very much. I really didn't realise I needed perking up." So not just your own support network. Think about the people around you who you know, you care about, and you love. Chat to them as well. Check in with them. See how they're getting on.
It's so important. Now, I've got some questions coming in, so we're going to go to Q&A soon. I'm not going to hog it, but I want to ask one more question. And anyone on the call, if you've got any questions for Aaron about anything in his life story, or being an elite athlete, or training, or the physical nutrition side of it, anything, please just put it in the chat. But my last question is, I mean, I always daren't ask it, but what next? I mean, obviously the Olympics got cancelled. What are you focused on for the next 12 months?
Oh gosh, it's the games just for next year now. So I'm putting everything into that. My DIY at home, obviously. But no, the games will take up all my time. But it's just so strange the way it worked out. I was literally putting in processes this year to make sure I spend time with my family because I was going to be away so much. Now I haven't not seen them for, going on 2 and a bit months now. So it's funny how things work out. But we're just starting to get more structure now. So whereas before we didn't know what was going to happen, I think we're planning to go back as a squad in September. We're putting that plan in place. Best case scenario, we'll go back as a team in September. Then maybe October if that doesn't work out. Then we'll start again in January, absolute worst case. And then if we don't go back in January, I'm not quite sure how this will look. So now it will be putting all the structure of my training back into place to be ready to go and compete in those camps where you're playing rugby for 6 hours a day, over 3 or 4 days, which is tough. When
do you have to stop drinking again?
Do you know what? It's my wife's, but I've calmed it down. No, joking aside, we're allowed to have the odd drink. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm there every night. I mean, like we all were for the first few days. This is great, but, no, I mean, I have a couple of drinks. I can't go mad because it leaks into my training. I end up feeling a bit rubbish the next day, and then I can't train as hard.
Yeah.
You can't do it, really.
You can't. Well, listen, it's always so fascinating to hear from you, and I know everyone on this call will just be like blown away and inspired. I'm going to go to the questions now. As I said, if you've got questions, put them in. The first question, we've kind of answered it, but we can see if we add to it. Someone just says, what are your tips for building mental endurance and resilience? I know we've covered some of it, but how do you can build kind of endurance like a muscle? How do you get mentally tougher?
I think that's difficult. I think it's putting yourself out your comfort zone and putting yourself in difficult situations. It is the way that you do it, I guess. And I'm guessing most people on this call would do that anyway. I think it's having that positive mindset when something does go wrong, stepping back from it and having that choice about, okay, this has happened. How am I going to deal with it? And I guess that then is mental toughness. It's a difficult one to say, really, because I would have never been as tough as I am if this hadn't happened to me. And I now look at it as the worst and best thing that ever did happen to me. But yeah, you just learn through experience.
It is. I mean, it's part of, my work as a coach. I'm helping people with the growth mindset. And when a challenge comes to them, I say, well, okay, how can you learn from it and how can you be more resilient? But also, if there aren't challenges, like you said, you can go out and push yourself. You can sign up for something. I mean, the easiest part of a challenge is signing up, right? Is saying, oh yeah, I'll climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Like that's the easy bit. So just sign up for something and then you've got to kind of dig deep and actually follow through on it.
That's a really good point. And that would be my advice I'd normally say to people in non-COVID times is sign up for a running race or something and then get someone to sponsor you. Once you're sponsored, you can't back out. Yeah,
yeah, it's like that get some peer pressure going.
Definitely.
So we have another great question, which is, you've accomplished so much other than obviously getting a medal at the games, which would be a dream. Do you have any other goals left that you'd like to accomplish?
I think if this is the only thing with what's happened to me is I can't ever be settled. So I don't think I'll ever feel completely complete. You become very aware of your own mortality by nearly dying. So I think I'll always have something in the pipeline. I don't think I'll ever just be able to sit back and not do anything. And I don't know what that would look like yet. I think I never know. I might go for another Games. The next one's in Paris, isn't it? That's quite local, though. I'm getting older now, so I don't know if they'll have me. but yeah, I will still do crazy challenges in the future. So watch this space.
I mean, like you said, you liked your kind of extreme sports before this happened. So are there any extreme sports you'd like to try?
I'm gonna give rollerblading a go again. I think I used to do that when I was younger. I can't do it. I can't injure myself. So if I fall over and break my arm and say to my coach, "Yeah, I can't go to the Paralympics. I've broken my arm rollerblading," drive to my house and slap me. I think. No, I will do other challenges. I think my thing will be finding things that people haven't done in a wheelchair, and then trying to do them in a wheelchair.
Which is incredible, and you're it's great for you. You love a challenge, but you're also such a role model. And the next question, Mark said, deep respect, which I hear that. Like, I have such respect for you. Do you encourage kids to become athletes? I know the answer to this because you speak a lot in schools, but can you share how you inspire and what you talk to the kids about?
Yeah, I tell them my story, and I just talk about. I keep it really simple when I'm speaking to young people, because they won't understand what it means training around a full-time job to compete like you all will as an adult, as adults. So I do. I mean, I just think it's really important that they're active. And you know what? This is maybe a conversation for another day. It scares the hell out of me when I see kids all on their tablets and not being active. I think we're on a massive time bomb as a nation, and we need to address this now. So you don't have to be a Paralympian, or you don't have to be at the top level. Just sign up and do something. Stay active. Like my kids, raising some money for their gymnastics club. They had to do 1,000 of something. I said, no, that's not enough. So I've got them doing 25,000 bounces on the trampoline.
25,000.
Yeah, I said, no, we're doing a good challenge.
Is that just so they would be kept occupied for longer? That's a very smart move.
I think you've got me there. No, I want them to be active, because normally they're doing after school clubs and things. And
yeah.
I'm finding it difficult. When we were only able to go out for an hour, it was tough. So it's given them a drive, but for me, at the back of my mind, I'm thinking this is just going to be really good for you, looking after your bodies.
And that's something I thought was so great about 2012 for people who were able-bodied and not able-bodied, was the PR they did around that, and just inspiring role models. And that's what I think children hearing from someone like you and having athletes visit their schools, and obviously they can't have that now in lockdown. And if you've got children, sharing stories like this with them, showing them documentaries on athletes, because that can capture their imagination and get them off the tablet and get them inspired. I see it, 'cause there's tennis courts near me. After Wimbledon, you can't get on the tennis court because everyone, or after the marathon, everyone's running like in the wrong shoes. You can tell they're not runners, but you need to keep putting this in front of children to keep inspiring them and reminding them about physical sport.
I'm really lucky. I've got quite a few friends who are athletes as well. I've jumped on a Zoom call with some para rowers the other day. I've borrowed a Concept 2 rower to keep me going.
Oh, brilliant.
And they're all on this call on Zoom. I couldn't keep up with them. They killed me, all of them. But I got my girls out just to have a look. So I thought, this is really good. So many positive female role models. My girls watching these girls rowing away, covered in sweat, working hard. That's what it should be like. People in the gym reading a book. What is it with people like? You're not training if you're reading a book in the gym. For God's sake. Sorry, I'm going on the tangent.
I'm so with you. though. We have a great question about nutrition. How do you eat and support yourself nutritionally for Olympic level training, for that that really intense level that you were getting to?
Yeah, okay. So I as an amputee, when I'm on my prosthetic legs, I burn twice as many calories as anybody else.
Oh, really?
By walking. So any amputee would have that, because I don't have calf muscles to get my leg up. There you go. So see the Zoom. There you go.
Yeah.
The prosthetic leg. I've got my knees, but it's still tough to walk. So I burn more calories. So I'm probably averaging about 3,000 calories a day just to maintain my body weight. And I have to consume 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight per day. So without my legs on, I weigh about 75 kilos, or between 70 and 75 kilos. So I'm eating lots of chicken, I drink so much milk. I cheat and have lots of protein shakes as well. But I'm in the fortunate category that I have to eat a lot to maintain. I mean, it's not, some athletes, if they're trying to hit a weight category, etc., are really, really restricted.
Yeah.
In my sport, it's better for me to be big because I want to hit people and smash them out of their wheelchair. They're upside down on their face, and it's easier to score around them. So I need a bit of weight behind me. I want to be, I'm big and burly, which is probably the best way to be, but it costs a fortune at the same time.
So it's like an effort just to eat that much and maintain the weight.
I've been having, so I'm eating about 5 meals a day at times. So in the afternoon, I won't have an afternoon snack. I'll have like a small meal, keep me going. So so at the moment, I just be smart about it and buy like big bags of stir fry when I go to the supermarket, and then the next few days I just make lots at one go and then portion it up and then eat it. It just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, it almost becomes a bit of a chore when you have to maintain at that level. But I highly recommend people watch them just after this. Go on YouTube and watch some wheelchair rugby. You will realise how physical it is, and actually how being bigger and having more weight behind you gives you an advantage. It's hardcore. Right, Aaron's got a great question. He says he was just coming back to that first marathon when your wheelchair broke down. Like, how were you able to fix it and still finish in 2.5 hours? He wants to know.
Right, so what happened was I couldn't afford a brand new racing wheelchair. So I got this second-hand racing chair, and it didn't fit me properly. But my dad's an engineer, my dad's a welder, so we cut it up and we bodged it, which was all right until it broke halfway through the marathon. So what happened was one of the straps broke underneath the seat. So in a racing wheelchair, I can't demonstrate it here, but you're curled up in a little ball because it's designed for performance, not for comfort.
Yeah.
Because the strap broke, my backside dropped down, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches. So it wasn't completely falling apart, but what it did was it put my body in the wrong position. So I started getting horrendous cramp in my backside. I spent the whole second half of the London Marathon with horrendous cramp. But again, I just wasn't giving up. I wasn't giving up, so just carried on pushing through, screaming a lot of the way, I think.
And the next time you did it, you had your own like bespoke wheelchair, or how did it work?
I did. I got some funding, and my local community raised me some money, and then I had my own wheelchair, like this silver fancy thing, still in my garage now, still use it.
That's awesome. And again, I don't think people realise how tough it is to be an athlete and not be funded, and these things with equipment that you don't get.
Yeah, because I mean, if you want to go and play able-bodied rugby, you buy a ball and a shirt, don't you? You go to JD Sport and you get change out of 40 quid. My rugby chair costs £3,500, and I get through one a year because I buckle them because I hit people so hard. I'm funded. I'm fortunate now with GB. I get mine sponsored, so that's okay.
Yeah. Now, what is the aspect of the physical training that you like the most? Someone's asked.
We've got. I hate it. It's like pleasure pain. At the university where I train, they've got a £110,000 treadmill called a treadmill. It's massive. It's got a huge wide track, and my rugby chair fits on it. Excuse me. And they put me on a very slight incline, and I basically have to push against the treadmill. So I have to keep up with it, or my chair rolls back. It's locked between 2 points. I'm all strapped in. I can't fall off. And that, it can push me further than I can push myself. And that's the one where you go to strange places in your head, just trying to not pass out.
How long do you do that for?
So sessions would vary depending on what point in the program we're in, without getting too technical. So some might be longer based cardio sessions where you're building a bigger battery and a stronger motor in the off season. So you might be doing reps which might be lasting sort of 6 to 8 minutes. Whereas other times we're doing 10 seconds on with a minute off, but that 10 seconds on is at 24.5 kilometers an hour.
Whoa.
And when it gets up to speed, bang, 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 bang. I'll share a video so people can see.
Yeah, send a link.
I warn you though, I think I heave in a few of them. It's quite intense.
Maybe don't share those ones then.
Yeah,
we've had a couple of questions about your daughters Chloe and Ella. Have you inspired them to do sport, and are they demonstrating the same kind of resilience? Because they've not had this life lesson that you had that made you super resilient. Like, how are you making your children mentally tough?
I think it's a really tough one. I think they know about Kilimanjaro, and Ella was really little, but I went in and did an assembly in her school after I did it, and she was sat at the front, proud as punch, and that was a lovely moment as well. I just want them to be happy. I mean, they're not showing any signs of wanting to compete at a competitive level in anything at the moment. I just want them to be active. I think it's just those life lessons, isn't it? That, sometimes things can be tough, but we do our best. They know obviously about my story and the things that I do. So I'd hope that would inspire them. I don't know. It's difficult. I don't want to be too pushy with them either.
But do you try and instill at least like gratitude, and so because they you know, they should be grateful, kind of realizing what they do have and making the most of it. Because you've got, like you said, you were close to death. That gives you a real kind of make the most of life attitude. How do you put that into them?
Oh, that's a massive question. I think it's, yeah, you've got to try. And at the moment, homeschooling them is killing me because they moan about everything. I don't know if anyone else's children are doing this. They come, oh, I've got to do this English work. I'm thinking, oh, you know, just go with it. Go with the work. Stop moaning. So, no, I think it's kind of just teaching the lessons that if you want to be successful, you've got to work hard. You know, they go, oh, I want to be a doctor. That's great. You're going to be a doctor if you want to be, but you're going to have to go to university for a long time and you need to get really good grades in your subjects. I'm kind of just trying to drip feed stuff like that in it.
Yeah, it doesn't come, it doesn't, the big challenges don't come easy. You've got to put the work in.
No, and I think so. And I think it's important to explain to them, you know, that stuff really does take a lot of work. I think it's maybe quite dangerous when someone says, oh, I'm going to be a vet. And you go, brilliant, you're going to be a vet when you're older. Great. If you don't explain, okay, you want to be a vet, you're going to have to work harder than anybody else. Find a spot on the university. I'm going on school mode here, aren't I? But yeah.
Well,
but yeah.
We're coming to the end of the Q&A. We've got another great question here, though. If anyone has a final question, drop it in. But we've got a great question from Bella, which is just, can you just talk us through, kind of at a high level, what's your daily routine? You know, what are the timings, getting up, training, that kind of thing? Maybe not now with homeschool, but like what would be typical for you?
Our normal week.
And how important, well, just a normal kind of day with training, and how important is that routine and schedule for you as an athlete?
Yeah, mine's all over the place because I work as well as a motivational speaker. I am on a week, what's the word? On a typical week, this is how it should work. It never normally does. I should do 3 days training where I fit a full-time training program into 3 days, and then 2 days self-employed work. And then I try to keep things clear at the weekend, although we have matches and things, be with my family. But when I train, that means I might go in and do a session in the morning, which might be a weight-based session. So I'm lifting weights. And then I might have a bit of time off where I then go and do that session on the treadmill, which I've already spoken about. And then I have another couple of hours off where I'm eating and normally sleeping in my car. And then I might go and do a session on the court. So I'm fitting in what a able-bodied athlete would be fitting in a full-time program into 3 days. So it often means I can be very, very tired. And some sessions, if I'm with GB, a typical day might be 3 hours training in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, and it just wipes you out. And then some other sessions might last 30 minutes, but by the end of it, as I already mentioned, I've been sick all over this. It's very pleasant, but it's probably the easiest way to draw a picture of how hard I'm training.
Yeah, and it's not just like the length of the training, it's the intensity.
It is indeed, yeah. And you can't maintain that all the time. And I have sports scientists who write all my programs for me, which make you peak and trough like this. So it's called macro cycles and then mesocycles, which is basically a technical word of saying a spreadsheet when it tells you what to be doing. But you basically do this the whole time.
So you kind of, part of your routine is just doing what you're told.
Well, yeah, I do what I'm told all the time. But that's the other thing about having the support network. So when I'm broken, I'm really tired, I arrive at the gym and they go, right, we're doing this today. You know, I'm really fortunate that I have someone else planning that out for me. And the idea is, just briefly, I know we haven't got long left, but if you imagine it as a mountain, on the run up to the Paralympics, you're building your way up. And then just before the games, you stop doing the really hard, intense training and you do really short, sharp stuff, which means you're getting lots of rest, but you don't lose your fitness. And then when you go into a massive tournament, it's like running down the other side and you're really, really fit. Then everybody else is as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're competing against the best. Aaron, I could talk to you all day, and I'm sure everybody's just been so fascinated at what you're saying. So thank you so much for making time. As we said, we're going to circulate Aaron's contact details afterwards with a little clip of you climbing Kili. If anyone on this call wants to support GB Wheelchair Rugby, Meningitis Research Fund, or if you know of any audiences that would benefit from hearing Aaron's inspirational story, which is, you know, it really is incredible, please do get in touch. Aaron, thank you so much from everyone here at the Conduit. We've got lots of thank yous coming on. Emmanuel, back to you, and thank you so much, Emmanuel, for hosting us.
Great. Thank you so much to both of you for such a thoroughly enjoyable conversation. I laughed a lot, so thank you so much. It was a great lunch break. For everyone else who's joined, thank you so much for participating. Lots of videos and resources coming your way. We'll share Emilie and Aaron's contact details in case you want to follow up with any questions or opportunities. But in the meantime, I think we've all been thoroughly inspired for the afternoon. So hopefully it's boosted all of us, both mentally and physically. So I wish everyone a lovely afternoon.